Okay, everybody. So, as part of HyperionDev's Futurist Series, we're going to be talking to some tech leaders and thought leaders within the tech space in SA. And obviously, these influencers have a global reach. Today, we're going to be talking to Lungisa Matshoba, CTO of Yoco. Lungi, can you give us a quick intro?
Awesome, man. Hey, hi. My name is Lungisa Matshoba. I'm the CTO of Yoco. I've been in the tech industry now since, I think like 2005, 2004. And I think the entire time really just been largely focused on startups and building businesses. Studied at UCT, did a business science, computer science as my sort of undergrad, and thereafter decided to try my hands at adventure building. And it was the school of hard knocks, but I feel like along the way I learned a lot. And that led to my journey into being one of the co-founders of Yoco.
Awesome. Now, a little known fact: I was actually lucky enough to be a part of your guys' team, so I'm very clued up as to what Yoco is. Give us some context. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so I think Yoco as a company was set up to solve a very simple problem, providing small business owners with access to payments. Back when we set up the business in 2014, the typical process of getting a card machine involved a 3-month wait, where you had to wait to kind of get the right kind of, proof that your business is going to succeed, alongside with a ton of vetting and onboarding related procedures. And I guess our goal as a company was just to reduce all of that and make it so you could get it within 2 days and start transacting from the moment where you wanted it to the moment where you're transacting within 2 days. The business has been around for a couple of years now, and we've been growing and continuing to grow. Yeah.
You know, I'd be remiss to not ask. Obviously, 2020 has been the best of years for all of us. You don't grow if you don't stretch, right? So maybe you can give us some. What are some of the milestones or learning points that 2020 has brought, specifically maybe as a CTO?
Yeah, so I think for us it's been an interesting year. I think in terms of from a technology perspective within the business, I guess it was just the importance of having built a team that could adapt, could move quickly when we needed them to, and we have a very full stack team within the company, and this gave us a lot of stretch and flex when we had times where we were trying to innovate really quickly or launch new products ahead of time, etc. I think the other big thing for us was we typically make a lot of platform investments ahead of time. And I think once again, that's meant that when it was time to do things really quickly, we had a solid base underneath us, which allowed us to stretch through that. So I think that's been a real sort of important technical lever for us. Always just trying to build solid foundations, which allows you to stretch in the tough times.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of businesses are taking that same stand, especially during these times, trying to be as lean but also as forward thinking as possible. So let's take a step back, Lungi. I mean, the whole point of this is to give some of the folks an idea as like what is a CTO, what is technology, how does it impact our lives? You know, we're looking at people who are school leavers more so, but also, I mean, working professionals, right? Don't really understand the true impact of tech in our lives. So just from your perspective, maybe if you can tell us about your story, but specifically how tech education informed your career choices.
Yeah, so I think from my side, from a very sorry, 1 second, Shim.
What do we have? Oh, hello, bring him in, bring him in.
Into the room.
It's
Sorry
a BBC moment, you know, like.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me just quickly give me a sec. Sorry about that, man.
No worries. This is the new normal, right? Like
Yeah.
this is how it is. Like it just makes everybody seem more real, more tangible. I love it, actually, to be honest.
I don't know if you want to re-ask the question, or we just try to remember now.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I'll go for it. Yeah, no worries. Okay, cool. So specifically, if you can give us an idea about your story, but also how tech education informed your career choices.
Cool. I mean, I think, for me, from a very young age, I started playing with computers. I got very lucky. My mom was doing some kind of additional coursework. I actually can't remember what it was, but it was at one of the universities. And as part of that, she was given a computer. to do something with. I honestly, I don't know what she was given the computer to do with, but they gave her a computer to do something with. And as kids, we were just not supposed to touch the computer. But every time my mom would walk out the house, I would, find a way to get onto that computer. It had Borland at the time. So I'd get into that computer at Borland DOS, and I'd be hacking around and finding ways to install software on that computer and play with it. It had the internet connection, dial-up. So that just sort of drew me in from a fascination perspective. So I was always sort of fascinated with that space.
Yeah.
The high school I went to was in East London, a school called Stirling High School, and they had one of the early sort of computer science programs in high school, computer studies, effectively. And I mean, they had sort of a higher grade computer studies was, I think there were about 8 of us who took it. It wasn't a very popular subject.
Right.
And they had a computer lab of like 4 computers, and you could go in there and just do stuff. So I didn't have a computer at home at the time. So I'd go home and I'd write programs on a piece of paper, and I'd come and type them up and try to see if I could get something to work as quickly as possible before somebody else had to take over the computer. So, by the time I got to the end of my high school education, I developed such a fascination that I wanted to study, a degree that involved software development. So immediately I took a business science, computer science at UCT. And I think, obviously there was a ton of coursework and everything, but I think more than anything, most of my time was just spent building stuff, random things on the computer. When I got to varsity, I managed to convince my parents to get me a computer, and I just spent all my time either in the computer labs on campus or in my room just coding, building random things of all manner. And I think a lot of the education we got was good fundamental basics of software development. But then that was just augmented by a keen interest and just wanting to spend as much time in front of a computer building stuff as possible.
Awesome. The way that you're describing it, right? Building stuff, doing things. It seems like you're doing one thing, but in doing that one thing, you're doing so many different things, right? Maybe you can guide us. What sort of principles or characteristics would you say somebody looking to go into tech would need as part of their themselves and their characteristics?
So I find it interesting. Like I'd probably say there's two different schools of that typically find their path into technology. There's sort of a highly kind of mathematical school where people are coming from a strong maths background and are looking to apply a very logical mindset to building software. And there's also a very creative mindset. So if I look at myself, I've always come off sort of a creative background. I took arts at school. If I had stuck with arts, I probably would have carried it out. Like my passion was arts first, and then sort of computer science. But I couldn't really find a path that made sense from an arts perspective at the end of high school. So I think for me, it was really about creativity. And I think creativity is one of the most important skills when it comes to computer science, because it lends itself to the kinds of problems you're solving. So ultimately, it's a career in solving problems and designing solutions. And this is a creative pursuit at the end of the day. So it's obviously anchored on like a whole bunch of other pillars, your ability to have a good mathematical grounding, etc. This is all good. But I tend to find that some of the best programmers typically played a musical instrument at some point in their life, or have a passion for music, or are creative in nature. And I think this is quite an interesting thing. It's not the typical mindset that you picture when you picture a software engineer, but at least for me, I think that background has a lot of strength to it, and really sort of allows you to apply yourself. The other one is just a passion for learning. The industry changes extremely fast, so like you can take whatever course, whatever training, whatever varsity program you want to take today, but it's almost invalidated in a few years' time. And if you haven't continuously learned, you're actually just not able to keep up. The fundamentals tend to stay largely the same of what it is, but even those, they're constantly evolving to a degree. But I think it's a career in constant learning, and I think that's sort of what the most exciting part of it, at least for me, has been, is that you're never the expert. You're always having to learn something new. And then I think the last bit of it is just probably a bit that's not often well, talked about. It's just, you have to learn more than just the technology, and just developing sort of people skills, learning how to work with people, how to, I guess, end of the day, like your fingers can only move so fast on a keyboard. And if you really want to multiply your ability to get stuff done, you need to ultimately get to a point in your career where you're able to multiply other people and help them do what you're trying to do as well.
Awesome. I think that's really solid advice, especially around the constant learning in the role and how fast things change. If we had to maybe drill down into that, what has been your experience learning in terms of your trajectory of learning in university or through education versus the trajectory of learning while you're in a career?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of varsity, I remember I thought I thought I had a degree in computer science, and what did that actually mean? I guess what I
Yeah.
learned was how to learn about software. So you open a bunch of doors, you'd learn sort of a wide gamut of stuff. But ultimately, like I've learned more since then by such a massive factor. Even just if I look at what we left university having programmed in Java and C++. These were the two primary languages
Yeah.
of the University of Cape Town at the time. And immediately thereafter, you get into a whole world of different languages. And what you start to realize is actually, what you've really learned is the fundamental building blocks. And now you have to build and augment on top of that. We never built end-to-end complete final production software. It was always like a concept done to 50% to 70% at best. And when you get into the real world, you realize that that's not good enough. You need to build complete software. You learn more about, I mean, at least in our varsity programs, we weren't learning about unit testing. We weren't being trained to build production software. It was an academic degree, ultimately. It's a science. So, we weren't, we had to learn all of that in the working world. I think the program's changed quite a lot since then. So I think that those might not be challenges that students today face. But these were some of the things for us, was that, agile software development was something that we covered in university, but, it was very artificial at that stage. And when you get out into the real world, you now start to understand exactly why you need it. So I think it's definitely like the factor of knowledge. I'd probably say 5 years after varsity, if I look at my total pool of engineering knowledge, the portion I did in university had to account for less than 10%.
Wow. Right.
And that's how it should be. That's how it should be ultimately.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree with that. And I mean, I have no technical experience, right? But I can completely relate to what I learned in varsity versus actual work experience. And I think also that soft skills comes into that as well, dealing with people and creating that multiplier effect. If we had to go and speak about your team itself, I mean, maybe you can give us some real world tangible examples here, but how important is tech to your current business and also the role of your tech team? So maybe some ideas of what's happening in your roadmap or what you guys have done, I think would be great.
So I mean, tech is our business. I think we're a product company, and ultimately technology underpins every product that we develop. So I'd probably say like it's probably one of the most important things in terms of how we do it as a company. Ultimately, without tech, we have no product to sell. If we're not doing it well, we have no product to sell, or nobody wants to buy the product if we do it badly. So, yeah, I think it is really like important to our business. In terms of our team, so we've sort of always focused on building out a team that's largely full stack. We have a preference for this. It gives us a lot of flexibility. It also means that from a team perspective, every team in the company tends to be able to carry their work end to end, a piece of work. Because they're cross-skilled. So this has always been important to us. It doesn't mean we don't have specialists who are, slightly stronger in certain aspects of the stack within the company. But it does mean, in general, anyone in the company is able to touch any piece of software. We find this to be quite important. It means that teams don't have to wait on each other for things, and I think that's extremely important. So you can, as a team, I can get this thing done completely and deliver the value to the customer. What this does mean, though, is that it does mean that from a team development perspective, we need to make sure that everyone in the team has an awareness of the different technologies that we're using. And we're also not a company that's shy about the different technologies. I mean, I think we always see ourselves as a company that picks the right tool for the job. So if there's a tool that we've never used before and it happens to be the right tool for the job, well, that's the tool that we're going to have to figure out how to use. I think as an organization, we're one of the early adopters of React Native.
Right.
So we do a lot of React Native development. We do Scala development as well. We do JavaScript and TypeScript. And these are things that everyone in the company just picks up and learns over time. We also do native iOS and native Android development. So I think from a team perspective, we really have a team that's passionate about learning. They're deeply skilled technicians as well. So a lot of the people on the team are constantly challenging and bringing new ways of doing things and new approaches. And I think that's one of the greatest things. Like it's definitely not the kind of company where, as a CTO, you can say that you are the person who knows everything about technology. There's constantly new ideas in the organization. They come from everywhere, and I love that.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely a great thing. Also, just from my days as well. Okay, so Yoco is a product company, 100%. I think the effect that Yoco has, however, it's affecting the economy as a whole, which is a combination of non-product and product-related companies as well, right? So just from your visibility in your position and also just being entrenched in the tech of your company, how would you see in-demand careers changing, and how important would learning to code be for those future scenarios?
So it's actually very interesting. So I think one thing that we're seeing a trend of is the idea that within a company, especially, you know, given the nature of the world today, everyone is starting to become technical in some fashion. It's a weird thing that even people who don't
Yeah.
code are wanting to know how to code or understand the fundamentals and the basics of coding, not because they're going to build software, but because they want to be able to think along those patterns. You're either working with engineers in the tasks that you're doing, or you're working with products that were built by engineers. And this kind of, it's a literacy almost. It's like reading. It doesn't mean, I'd probably say becoming more technical is good for anyone, regardless of what career they do. Yeah, and it's almost. I mean, I have a friend of mine who's a lawyer who's been learning software engineering, and
Yeah.
it's because it changes the way you think and how you solve problems and how you approach problems and how you think about repeated work and repeatable work. So I think this is a really important skill for anyone to pick up. It's one of those, as I said, like you're constantly learning. So ultimately, like whether you jump in now or jump in later, you almost the distance between you and the expert is never as far as you think, because they're always having to learn as well, because there's new challenges ahead. So it's one of those things where you can jump in and swim in the ocean whenever you'd like. And as soon as, I think you should always do it as soon as you get the opportunity, but you can always jump in later. It's, I guess, one of the nice things about it. So it's never too late to jump in and start learning. And I think that's really nice. So yeah, so I think in terms of the future of work, I definitely think that like becoming more technical, regardless of what career you're part of, is actually going to be an important part of every career in the future.
Awesome. I think you're touching on a lot of the fears and concerns that a lot of people have when deciding on if, when, how they should learn how to code. And I think, is my brain wired the right way, which you touched on earlier? And is this the right time to start? And it's so intimidating because there's so much to learn. But as you mentioned, there's no predefined start and stop. It's you jump in where you can and you pick up what you feel you can. Considering how businesses are dramatically changing in the way that you've described, what hiring insights would you consider to equip your business to deal with any sort of disruption?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. Like I think in the old days, you used to hire people for, I guess, for the journeys they've been on to date. And I think the things that are starting to change is that, as companies realize that we don't know what journeys that we're going to be taking as companies, you start to look for people based on the journeys that they're capable of going on, which means that you're looking for people who have, who show a strong acumen for learning, a strong passion for growth and development, and a strong passion for what your company is trying to do. So like, at least for ourselves, we're always looking for people who show a strong passion for entrepreneurship, for small business, because we think these things are really good alongside obviously technical skills, and a strong technical background is really good to have. But these passions also serve you well. If you're not passionate about the work you do, you're not going to be able to keep up with where the work's going to take you. So I think, it's definitely, I think for organizations now about looking for people who are going to be going with you on the journey, who are going to be learning and adapting as the company learns, changes, and adapts. So I think that's sort of the biggest change really when it comes to hiring. I think the other big thing alongside that is, and we've even noticed it now, is I think 5, 6, 7 years ago, if you'd asked me about where the best developers come from, I would have listed all the varsities in South Africa. Today, you know, I would probably say that's not necessarily the case. They come from anywhere and everywhere. And there's so many different ways to become a software developer today that that's no longer even a requirement we have for people coming into the company. It's, you know, we're really looking for passion, the fundamentals of software development, but these don't necessarily come from the top varsity programs anymore. Yeah. And I think that's been an interesting shift. So, and I think, to be honest, given the small exclusionary number of people able to get into a university every single year, this is a good thing, especially as a tech company in South Africa. If we're limited to a hiring pool that's capped by the total number of students graduating from our top varsity every year, we'd have a terrible problem as a tech company. So I think that's for me has been a really positive change. That that where you got your skills matters a lot less than the fact that you have them now.
Yeah, I think you touch on such a great point here. I think the demand and supply is definitely out of sync with regards to developers, especially in this country. And if we look at it, the perception that a lot of companies have is very much, I would say, of the older school of thought. You know, where did you study? What sort of degree do you have? What are your thoughts on how this change will be driven from the corporate perspective, or from the private sector, in terms of looking for skill sets that you mentioned earlier that is not of the traditional education?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things will probably drive that from a corporate and company standpoint. I think one, there's obviously the sheer shortage, which will make many companies go, cool, well, let me broaden my interview scope. And as long as you're keeping your actual interview process just as tight as it was before, you should be getting exactly the same quality of candidate. I mean, the piece of paper never really, you should have never really trusted the piece of paper anyway. Your interview process should be taking care of all of that. So I think as companies open up and as people come in from different backgrounds, they'll go, oh, well, actually, I hired this person. They didn't have a varsity degree. They'd done a program at XYZ Institute, and they're doing really great, right? And you start to build confidence. And I think over time, that'll start to build a lot of confidence. I think it also, for me, what I've noticed as well is from a second career standpoint, there is an advantage that people have when they've basically done another career and then come across into software development. So I've tended to find that like second career software development software engineers are actually really good. They come with a certain amount of discipline and the right kind of approach as well. I mean, it's I guess it's just more indicative of like of career maturity, if I'm honest, more than anything else. So I think that's been an interesting transition. And then that's also paired with, like, I think the varsities as well produce absolutely fantastic talent. So I think as a company, you're just going to end up with a mixture. And this will mean that you have a diverse environment of people coming from different backgrounds, different educational institutions. And this can only be better for a company. I mean, we pride ourselves on diversity, and every company should. And this is just another type of diversity at the end of the day.
Amen. Amen, man. If only a lot of other people thought about that the way that you do. And I think diversity is key, diversity in skill sets, of course. Yeah, Lungisa has spoken. I think it was so great to get inside of your mind and try and understand of how you look at things. I still always refer to you as my favorite founder. We'll keep that between us. Yeah. Yeah.
We are all great founders, all of us in every business.
100%, 100%. Lungi, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was so great to hear you, and also just to speak with you again. Any other thoughts, closing off thoughts before we end?
No, I mean, nothing really. I'm hoping that anybody watching this is encouraged to take up a career in the software space. And I think even if you're not encouraged to do that, encouraged to learn more about the space. Yeah, I'm so passionate about it. And I think if I can be this passionate about something, I'm hoping it can spark a little bit of something in someone.
Awesome.